Welcome, everyone. I'm Pamela Riccia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Virginia Warren. Hi, Virginia.
Hi, Pam.
Hello, hello. I was recently connected again to Virginia through a mutual online friend, and I am excited to learn more about her unschooling experience. So to get us started, Virginia, can you share with us a bit about you and your family?
My husband, Bill, have been married. It's going to be 19 years this year. We have two children. They're both girls. Lydia is 13 and Miriam is 11. And they've never been to school.
Oh, they've never been.
No, we actually decided on homeschooling before our kids were born. We live in an area that makes that an easy decision to make. I live in Montgomery, Alabama, where the public schools have been taken over by the state because of performance and corruption and safety and lots of reasons. So that was an easy decision to make. Homeschooling is actually not that unusual in Alabama, and it's also really, really easy to do. Most of the people, though, who homeschool in Alabama do it for religious reasons. So people will assume things about you when they find out that you're a homeschooler, which, to be fair, they're pretty safe in assuming in our area. Right? It's not a big.
From there, how did you discover unschooling then? Everybody's homeschooling. And what did your family's move to unschooling look like?
Well, I'm not sure how, but I learned about unschooling while I was still pregnant with my first daughter. I started reading on sandradodd.com. This would have been in 2004. And I was already interested in attachment parenting. I was already kind of planning ahead for that kind of soft landing. And when I read the stories on Sandra Dodd's website about how people lived with their children, I would cry. I was sitting at my desk with my big pregnant belly at work during my downtime, reading, sandradodd.com, playing with the randomizer, and things, learning all these names of these people that would influence me so much. Yeah, I was lucky enough to stumble upon it. I wish I knew how.
Yeah.
And then I joined the Always Learning list. I think my kids were still really young, and there were a lot of things I still didn't get. I thought I knew so much. But it's easy to say you're gonna homeschool when your kids aren't even school age.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what's gonna happen. And and so so I started reading. I started meeting people online. I got a chance to I made some friends. My family and I went to Minecon in Orlando in 2013, and because I was on an unschooling Facebook group, we were able to locate some other unschoolers who had come to Minecon. And the people I met there, they actually hadn't traveled from as far. They were Florida locals. And we all went out to dinner that night. And one of the mothers invited us to come stay at her house so we could go to their homeschooling park day.
Oh.
And we did. And we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. And that's how I first started meeting people and seeing the rubber meet the road. And of course, we had already decided, not to use school. And our kids were already showing so many varied interests, the idea of introducing curriculum seemed limiting rather than helpful.
Helpful.
So yeah,
So that's how you got there. That's
that's how,
cool.
that's how we got started. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Well, in during that time then, what did you find to be your biggest stumbling block as you came to understand what unschooling was
I
as a
kind of
lifestyle?
I kind of mentioned it before, but like thinking that I already knew, like thinking, oh well, I read all this stuff and I read it twice and I read everything. So I knew I already knew what was going to happen. I knew what was going on. And there were areas where, like, um, for example, I I already hated school, and my kids had never been to school, so clearly deschooling completely irrelevant to me. So I didn't need to read about that. I didn't need to think about it. I didn't even need to know what it was. I mean, because clearly, I already knew what it was. I thought I did.
Hmm.
Um, Another place, and this is a pretty common one, and this was a combination of thinking you get it, but you don't, and also not paying attention to your own words. But I thought I had the whole food thing down because I had never required my children to eat at certain times or in certain places or in a certain way. And well, you know, I could just control what they eat by controlling what I bring into the house and where I take them and how I react to what they choose. And because I thought I already was so woke on that, I never read the Full Plate Club. I never read the pages about control and its associated problems because I didn't have that problem. I wasn't trying to control anybody except when I was.
Hmm.
And I didn't even realize what I was doing until my family went on a cruise one year when my kids were 5 and 7. And I kept saying, I'm not going to try and control what anybody eats on this cruise. I was saying it out loud. And I still couldn't appreciate the fact that if I was not going to try and control what anybody was eating on this cruise, that means I was trying to control what people tried to eat. And I wasn't even paying attention. I was just ignoring it
Yeah,
because I thought I was already doing the thing, but
that's
I was just
that's really interesting that it wasn't until you heard yourself saying that out loud that you clued in that there was another level for it for you.
and I had to say it out loud like 5 or 10 times in a week before I noticed.
Yeah, before you know. And that other piece, when you were talking earlier about how, you didn't think that you needed deschooling, you didn't look into what people meant by that word because you already dislike school. So it's like, thinking that deschooling's all about deprogramming kind of about school. And I mean, in a sense, at first that's what it can seem like, right? Although by the end you really get to a totally different place. So that's really interesting. That might be really helpful for some people to realize that it's not about like learning to dislike school. Like,
It's not about disliking school at all.
exactly, that's
It's
so cool.
really it's dangerous. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what your child is going to want. You don't know what's going to happen in your family.
Hmm.
You don't know what you're saying and who's hearing it and what it's making them feel. My kids don't need to think that their friends that go to school are a bunch of, slaves and prisoners. If their friends who go to school want to tell them that they feel that way, that's their business, and that has happened. The most surprising thing I found, and this doesn't generalize, but I found it interesting. My my younger daughter has a social group of kids that she connected with through a roller skating rink that we go to. Some of the kids she knew before, and most of them go to school.
Yeah.
And I asked her what they say about school, and she said they never talk about school at all, ever. I was like, okay. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no,
These are like 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids.
Yeah. They just leave it behind. That is very interesting. Yeah. I mean, that is such a great point in that you don't want to, I was going to say, you don't want to poison any relationships by giving that kind of impression even to your kids, or even for us to think about it negatively. I mean, I much prefer thinking about it as it's a choice, right? That's a place, and we understand how it works, and it's a choice for us to send our kids there or to not. Because, I mean, same with my kids growing up, we didn't have unschoolers or even homeschoolers really in our neighborhood, in our area that we knew. So all the kids that my children engaged with face to face, they did all go to school, right? It was just a different way to learn, and we never made a big deal about it one way or the other. It was just the other kids would think it was awesome that they could choose not to go. Now, I've been looking forward to this question too, because our mutual friend described you to me as a gamer mom, right? And I thought that was pretty cool. And I, for many years, just loved watching my kids play video games and helping them with walkthroughs and helping them find all the little hidden bits and looking up codes when they were younger and doing all that kind of stuff. We had so much fun. But my personal gaming skills kind of top out at Animal Crossing, and I love Phoenix Wright and is it
Animal Crossing,
Hotel Dusk, and those those kind of they're more they're not action games. Let's put it that. Anything where there's timing on my response, I'm in trouble. So I'd love to hear about your experience and perspective on video games.
Well, my husband and I both have loved video games since we were children. We're a little early on that, but we both, not only grew up loving video games and playing video games as much as we could, we both became, computer professionals. So, I don't work outside of the home anymore, but my husband goes to work all day and works on computers and comes home and plays on computers. And every one of my family likes games. My older daughter gaming is definitely her main interest. My younger daughter loves games, but it's not her primary interest. And when she chooses a game, it's more about who she gets to play with than what game it is. Mm-hmm. It's more of a social experience for her. And she spends a lot of time doing digital art also, and analog art. But for it was this is another a thing. I can almost tie this back to stumbling blocks. Sometimes, some people are lucky. Some people, have a little advantage in one area or another in unschooling. Some people, grew up with parents who never controlled what they ate, so that's not an issue for them. Some people grew up with parents who never tried to control. I was trying to think of something else. something
Activities,
that wasn't
choices,
as easy for me.
bedtime.
Yeah, bedtime. Yeah. For us, like the video gaming thing was like a gimme. Uh, and that's a there's there's a hazard in feeling too smug. I mean, I don't think I don't think being smug ever really helps people out. It kind of feels good, just like, you can feel superior to somebody who hasn't had the same experience as you. Good luck with that. Uh, and I even had, I didn't even, it let me overlook um, my own uncharitable thoughts that I still had about my children's interests. And here's a specific story. Um, my daughter, Lydia, my older daughter, is very, very, very into Pokemon. And the amount that she knows about the Pokemon universe, the Pokemon themselves, the lands, the history of the company Game Freak and the creator of the original Pokemon game and how he used to catch bugs in
Yeah.
Japan when he was a child. Like she's her I like to say that her knowledge of Pokemon is not encyclopedic, rather it is Pokedextrous. Um, but there was still, Pokemon hit in 1996 when I was, I was like 4 years out of high school. So I was 22. I didn't get into Pokemon when it first came around. If I had been a kid when Pokemon came around, I feel pretty sure it would have been my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It wasn't something I was into. It wasn't something that I knew anything about. It wasn't the type of game I really liked anymore. And there was still a part of me inside that at the same time I was going, wow, I can't believe how much she knows about this topic, how deep her interest is, how firmly lodged in her mind all of these facts are. But I still had this snotty part of me that was like, oh, I wish that she would be interested in something real. Or, I don't know. And I was having this crappy thought one day, and I don't know why it was any different than it ever is, but I was finally able to perceive the fact that interest, Pokemon is real. It employs thousands of people. It creatively fulfills artists and musicians and computer programmers and writers who create it. It's a work of art. It creates jobs. Tons of people make money. Tons of people have fun. Even if there was nothing else good about it than all the pleasure that it's brought to people, it would still be wondrous. And it's done so much more. And that's just one game.
Wow, that is such a great way to think about that, Virginia. It's so true too, right? That it's people's real lives that are all around. Their fingers are in all of it, and it's bringing, like you said, the creative fulfillment for all the people working on it, the business around it. Yeah, I mean, when you look at anything, when you look at Minecraft in that way, when you look at movies, like you can take that and realize all this stuff that we think is just, fiction and not important, those are people's lives that are creating it too. Those are adult people's lives who are enjoying and thrilled and making money through their job, creating these things. Oh, I love that. I've never really, looked at it through that lens.
We're also big fans, my husband and I, and our kids also are big horror heads. We love macabre stories and cool special effects. And it's really easy to sneer at horror movies and say that they are, I don't know, pick anything anybody ever says about any piece of art that they don't personally like.
Yeah, yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that it's the work of hundreds of artists, from the people who design the special effects to the people who actually build the machines that, squirt the blood out of that
Yeah,
fake
yeah.
wound that was created by a makeup person and applied by maybe 2 or 3 other makeup people. And just,
I
I
know.
don't know. It's like, it's art.
And it,
People like to think that they can objectively, say this is good art and this is bad art. But I just think there's art that is for you and there's art that's not.
mm-hmm.
And it doesn't help anybody to, as they say, yuck somebody else's yum.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I hadn't heard that
You've never
first.
heard? Oh, that's a good one. It's
That's a
also why
good.
you should keep your mouth shut if someone's eating something that you don't like. You don't like it? No, hey, don't eat it.
Yeah, and that is something I learned from watching my kids, right? Now that I was with them all the time, I could see them exploring things and I could see their reactions and I could see how much they enjoyed things. And I'd be like, that's not really my cup of tea, but you're right. I very quickly learned not to say something because if I said something judgy, it would shut them down. And after seeing them where that takes them a few times, shutting things down was not something that I wanted to do, right? Because it made the world smaller instead of bigger.
Because you never know what's going to connect to something else.
Mm.
And even if you think a piece of art, a television show or a movie isn't that great, it was still made by people who were influenced by other artists, and you get to get connected to that world through their work. One of my kids used to like to watch this show on Disney. It was one of these one of the shows they make. They're aimed at kids like school age kids, and it was called Jessie. It's about a young woman who was a nanny to a group of kids, standard kid fare, absent or buffoonish adults, so that the kids could actually do something interesting.
Yep.
But they had a Halloween episode, which was, as it turns out, a The Shining pastiche. Like they were making all of these references to the movie The Shining. Now this is a kid show. It's not like an ambiguously all ages show. It's a kid show. But they made a Halloween episode that was full of references to the horror movie The Shining, which I think is a great movie. My kids, we were watching this episode of Jessie, and I was curious. Like so many cultural references have come through to them from things that they have never seen before. Like they know a huge amount of Star Wars, even though they've never seen any of the movies and are not interested in them at all.
Yeah.
But it's part of our culture. And so I was curious if they had somehow heard of The Shining. So we were watching Jessie making all these references to The Shining. I asked them if they'd ever heard of The Shining, and they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "How?" And they were like, "YouTube." And then they asked me if it was a good movie, and I said, "Well, yeah, it's a great movie. It's an excellent movie." And they were like, "Oh, let's watch it." And that's why I ended up watching The Shining with my 2 young children. And the funniest thing was the things that I thought would scare them didn't scare them at all. And the things that I hadn't really thought about were the things that were scary to them. The funniest moment was we were all made to jump by a title card that said Tuesday because they built up all of this tension expertly with Jack Nicholson staring out a window and the scary string music playing. We're like, oh, the strings are terrified.
Yeah.
And I thought, have you ever seen the movie The Shining? I should probably not.
I used to love Stephen King. I used to read him all the time. I was a younger kid.
I love him. I probably read Shining when I was their age. So, but I thought that the lady in the bathtub would scare my daughter Miriam because she was grossed out about stuff that had to do with skin, but it didn't scare her at all.
Mm-hmm.
And when the scene where the blood comes flooding out of the elevators, Lydia said something like, "Oh, I think somebody spilled a bottle of fruit punch." And Miriam said, "Maybe two." So that didn't scare them at all. The scene that they thought was the creepiest was the one when when Jack picks up Danny. Yeah, Danny puts him on his knee and is like trying to be soothing, but Danny's obviously scared out of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
They found that to be the scariest moment of the movie.
Yeah.
Trust it.
Oh, that's really interesting. It is so fun to see what to see things through their eyes, right? No matter what, whether it's movies or games or whatever, to see things through their eyes is fascinating. And I wanted to jump back too, just to remember you were talking earlier about feeling smug, right? Because I think that is a great clue. It's like the switch. The minute we're feeling smug, we're not learning anymore. We're not observing and analyzing things. We think we've got it all figured out, and now we're looking outward and just, yeah, hey man. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's a great clue, a great observation.
I mean, it's not. I'm not saying it's. It's fine to be like happy with.
Yeah. There's a difference. There's a difference.
But yeah, that's important. Learning doesn't end. If you think you're done, you're just ignoring it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Because I mean, you even I mean, my kids are older, and obviously, and I'm still learning in all those situations. There's still forever there's something to learn, you know? I think that's the scariest moment when we think we've got things figured out, because that we're gonna it's gonna come hit us in the end sometime.
If you think you've got things figured out and your plan is laid out, if you let new information in, you want to change your plan. Some people don't want to change their plan.
Yeah, because once you get stuck in that rut, you think you know where you want to go, and you think you know how to get there. Like, I even write notes for myself now. Remember to be open and curious always, because you know what, that rut might work for you, but you might find that you're going to have to work harder to stay in there, because there's so many other things tapping at you. What about this? What about this? And if you're not letting things in and thinking about things, you might miss that amazing path that could have been like 10 times more fun, more fruitful, more whatever for you. You kind of get tunnel vision, right? Even positive. There's negative, but there's positive tunnel vision too, I think.
There's kind of a math term for that, and that's reaching a local maximum. You're at the top of the hill that you're on, and if you don't look around, you don't see that there are bigger hills that you could get on top of.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great metaphor. So, what has surprised you most so far about how unschooling has unfolded in your lives? What's surprising about it?
What's surprising is the way it seeps into everything. Unschooling principles apply to much more than homeschooling. That feels just ridiculous to even say. Once you decide to look and see if what you believe about school is really true or not, and you find out that you've made some mistakes in your thinking, things that you haven't examined, things you haven't bothered to, I don't want to say haven't bothered, that sounds dismissive. I guess, I'm sorry it's coming out so random.
Okay, that's okay.
A better way to, I think it's about bias.
About what, sorry?
bias.
Bias. Yes.
Bias. Unconscious bias. Um, it's normal. Another word for bias is like a shortcut. Like there, there are positive biases and there are negative biases, and not all bias is bad. Being biased toward patience, like you think everything else equal, I'm just going to try and you know stay calm and see what the application of more patience would take it. Like if you never if you're not aware of your bias, you cannot compensate for it. If you don't know that you are, it's very easy for bias to feel like absolute truth. Like for people to feel like the same thing we were talking, I mentioned earlier about people wanting to say this art is good and this art is bad. Yeah. That's bias, because what they're saying is the art I like is good and the art that I don't like is bad. And I believe that deschooling puts you into a habit of looking for bias and trying to overcome it, and also looking for ways to try to form biases which actually make your life easier. Like say yes more. That's a bias. Other things equal, I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna be biased towards saying yes, unless there's a really good reason not to. And once I started noticing how much of the attitudes that I had about school were part of unconscious biases, things that you learn, like school is where learning happens. That's a bias. Mm-hmm. And I started applying that to other areas of my life, stuff that I hadn't really thought about all that much. And one of those things was how I choose or choose not to conform to mainstream beauty. I hadn't really thought about it much before I had daughters, whether or how much it mattered if I decided to wear makeup or not wear makeup and remove body hair or not remove body hair. And I've I've come to a much different position on these things now as a mother of daughters than I had before when I was just a daughter. And I don't want to do a lot of the beauty performance that is part of our culture anymore, but I also don't want to like ruin it for my kids if they want to, because it can be fun. And I'm trying to figure out how to, I don't want to demonize shaving your legs or not shaving your legs. If they choose to remove their body hair or wear makeup, I want it to be, well, I want it to be, is what I want. All I'm trying to say is that I hope that they will be able to do it for their own reasons instead of just, I can't tell you how many times a day I watch a video. I should say how many times in a week, but I watch a video on YouTube or something, and there's young women talking about something or other, and they use the phrase, I had to shave my legs. Nobody has to shave their legs, but it's okay to shave your legs if you want to. And that's you know, that's the path I'm trying to chart, and I don't know that I'm doing a great job. Maybe I should be more strident. Maybe I'm not sure. I'm still not sure what I should be doing on this. Um,
I think it's interesting that we feel we need to be sure.
hmm,
I mean, and it's something that's so super hard to talk about because, on one hand, because it's like, you know, they're our children are intelligent human beings and they're going to, you know, figure this stuff out. They are going to be living their lives. They're going to be getting input. And I think when you were talking way back to what this question was, what surprised you about how unschooling is unfolding, and you said it's how wide it ends up reaching, right? So
yes.
we're not making their world smaller so that they only know what we tell them, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
because so on one hand we're very connected with our children and we love them very much and we support them as much as we can, but we're supporting them in experiencing a larger world, and they're going to have um, so many ways that they come across this information. So, and just living in an environment where choices are cultivated, right? That we make choices for ourselves. And so whether we don't really need to know exactly whether or not we're doing the right thing, saying this or saying that, because that's one moment, it's one thing from us, and we've already I was going to say taught them. No, we already live with them in an environment where what we say is not the be all and end all.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a
Certainty.
go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. Certainty shuts down learning. Also, as you're saying,
Yeah,
being sure. If you're sure, well, you need any more information.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, if you're sure and you got new information, maybe you wouldn't be sure anymore. Oh no.
Exactly. And those are the unconscious biases, we're spinning right around this. It's beautiful because it's the unconsciousness of it that makes things difficult. That makes us think we have a right answer, right? We can share what we think. There's this because so often in questions and everything, people are like, what do I do with my kids in this situation? And so often the answer is, well, talk to your kids, right? Have the conversations. There is no right, wrong answer for anything. It's what makes sense for them. And the great thing about having these conversations with them growing up, rather than just telling them to do what we think, is that we're there to bounce ideas around with. We're there for the time, they shave their legs, and then there for the time when holy crap, I don't want to do this, and you have it doesn't need to be a one-time choice. We have our entire lives to make so many of these choices, right? So on one
I
hand,
used to choose to shave my legs
yeah,
every day. I can't imagine choosing to do that again, but I'm not that person anymore.
yeah.
So,
And this is how unschooling grows, because once you're making choices and you're living a lifestyle where analyzing and making choices for ourselves becomes the way we approach every day, it grows beyond just the educational or the academic-y pieces of it, right? And it grows right into life, and everything becomes up for grabs. Like, that's how food gets in there, that's how sleep gets in there, that's how hygiene gets in there, if you want to call it bigger picture. So on one hand, it's like these aren't be all and end all decisions that we need to make for our children and choose a stance, even if it's let them be. but the challenge with that is I worry people take that, oh, well, then I don't have to be involved. I'll just let them do whatever they want. Because so often people interpret that to step back and not stay connected. But it's in those conversations about the topic where they figure things out, right? Where they bounce ideas off of us, where we get to share our experience and our perspective. That's the important part, not the knowing which way to take the direction, to take the conversation, but to have the conversation in the first place, right? That makes sense?
Yeah, it had me thinking about, this is something I was thinking about the other day. There's a phrase that people use sometimes, and I mean, I've heard, seen, read usually, even by, experienced unschoolers who I love a lot. This phrase, I think it comes across like talking about like unschooling communication to people who like haven't already drank the Kool-Aid. There's a phrase that I think people think it sounds really nice and sweet, but I think it comes across a little bit dismissive. And it's something that people say, I feel like I've seen this and read this so many times, that unschoolers learn just by living life. And man, everybody is living their life. If you say, well, what makes us unschoolers different from you people who send your children to school is that we learn by living life. Ew. Everybody is living their life. Everybody learns by living their life. I think that sounds really flippant and smug and like, woo woo, we just do whatever. And it gives a really false impression, I think, of how unschoolers support their kids' interests. And of course, that's going to look different for every kid. And that's what I think that's what makes, gets people into being like, oh, it's whatever you do, it's unschooling. Oh, we unschool on the weekends. It's my vacation. I don't know. I'm just complaining now.
I get your point. And what's really interesting, because when you say that, they learn just by living. I mean, it's true, because unschoolers who say that know what they mean, but it's absolutely true. Kids who go to school are also learning from that experience. It's only that they're learning a lot of things that aren't really expected. They're learning what life under control is. They're learning coercion tools and how to react, how to submit, how to choose to rebel. Like they're still learning through the life that they're living, aren't they?
I think that they're, whether adults want them to or not, I think one thing almost all children learn at school is that the goals of school that have to do with, not to put too fine a point on it, crowd control, almost always come before learning goals. And it's not a conspiracy. It's not something evil. It's the nature of group situations. Mm-hmm. If you have 30 or 40 children who only have one adult to pay attention, oh my God. Sorry. Let's not stray into school bashing. That sounds so hard. It's so hard. They do it that way because it can't really be accomplished in any other way. And it's not really their fault. And
system.
How well, and that means that how well a child can do in school is partially constrained by whether they can adapt to that or not. I call it the school game. I hope that doesn't sound too dismissive. When I was a kid, I was really, really good at the school game.
Yep.
And it was very rewarding for me. I was lucky. I didn't know that the kids, I thought all the kids that didn't do schoolwork were like conscientious objectors. And I thought they were so cool for just being like, I'm not going to do this if I don't want to. And I was just, in me, I was just like, dude, just, it's so much easier. You just do it and then they leave you alone.
That's exactly me.
Just do it. And then the rest of the time you can
Do whatever you want.
just get it over with. It never occurred to me that there were some kids that couldn't do that schoolwork because it didn't make sense to them. They weren't developmentally, ready. Some kids don't really read until they're 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You can't tell the difference between these kids and kids that read it too when they're all 18. But I don't remember learning how to read. It was just something I could always do. And I didn't know that other kids weren't just like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Because all we see is the system's view of it, right? We don't see the individuals until we start paying attention to that. And I know for me anyway, I didn't. I just, like you said, I learned the game and I played the game to make them happy, and that was that. That was all there was to it until later on when I started looking and to see the implications of the system. And yeah, it's, it's I want to say it's not school bashing in the sense that, we're choosing that's not the system in which we want to live, to put our children in. We want a different system. Now, it's not like you said, the system's not a conspiracy. People who are choosing to send their children to school, that's part of the whole picture. It's just, again, it's a choice. And I think the most important thing is just realizing that it's a choice, because I think for parents, once they realize that it's a choice, even if they choose school, at that point they realize there's also pieces inside school that they can choose. They can choose not to put so much emphasis on grades and look more at the individuality of their child. I know lots of parents who didn't smash on their kids about what their grades were, or sit on top of them over homework and things like that. There's a whole different way. You don't have to become the system at home too, right?
I think grades are probably the most damaging thing about the school environment.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are still like oohing and eyeing over Finland and their public school system and how wonderful it is. And I think the most important thing about it is they don't have grades. Nobody mentions that in their beautiful, glowing articles about how wonderful Finland schools are. I'm a fan of Alfie Kohn, author of Punished by Rewards and Unconditional Parenting. I know I read Punished by Rewards. That really, I was already, pretty much in that choir, but it was very eye-opening the way that he framed things. And I believe this phrase comes from his book, but that children experience the withholding of rewards as a punishment. And that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
Reward and punishment are the two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. And that it really does. And it's a very strong tool of control. Like even when you're rewarding someone, it's a tool of control. Like, I love that you did this, so therefore everybody is going to learn that I would love if you did that more.
And what happens, I got an A this quarter am I less worthy if I get a B next quarter?
Next time. Yep.
And you're always being ranked against other people, your friends. It's like this sorting and ranking. I mean, every time psychologists do experiments on this, they find out it hurts people.
Hmm.
It causes them to focus on things that destroy their.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. I
Okay.
really wanted to know what your favorite thing about your unschooling lifestyle is just right now. Just right now.
Yeah. My favorite thing about our unschooling lifestyle right now is my kids are both. My older daughter's been in it for a while, but my younger daughter is like getting into it. The the tween to teen sort of time rotation where they need a lot of sleep because they're growing and they still stay up the same amount of time. So the time that they sleep and wake kind of precedes through the day. I am so happy that they can get the sleep that they need. I remember being, in the seventh, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. And I remember waking up in the morning and crying because I was so sleepy and I just wanted to sleep somewhere that I had to go to school. And I fell asleep in school at high school so much. Like I I would have gotten in a lot of trouble if I wasn't otherwise really good at the school game.
Yes, isn't it lovely that they can follow, get what their bodies need, right? That is such a
Mm-hmm.
huge piece. Like because when you're trying to constantly go through your days exhausted, you can't function, really. It's literally sleep deprivation, right?
It's literally dangerous.
Mhm.
I mean, the effect is so large, they can see an uptick in fatalities after daylight savings time every year just because people are a little sleepy.
Mhm.
There's more auto accidents, there's more people falling asleep behind the wheel, there's more accidents in general just because people are a little bit sleepy. What we're learning about how important sleep is now these days is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they keep studying sleep and it keeps looking more and more important.
But still, the was going to say the system hasn't adjusted to what we know, but
I keep hearing, oh, scientists discovered that high schoolers need to sleep a little longer and also that homework doesn't help people. Oh, well, keep giving them homework. Don't change the time of school.
yeah.
School isn't, school is kind of set up for the convenience of
Hmm.
adults.
We said it. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And trying to, can you imagine just trying to make changes in it's like a large
High
ship
school
trying to
kids should
steer.
really be going to school like 12 to 6,
Hmm.
you know.
That would be so helpful, I think. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, Virginia. It was so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed it very, very, very much.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. And before we go, where's the best a place for people to connect with you online?
You can find me on Facebook in the best unschooling groups only. I'm not. I'm like technically I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I don't. Yeah, don't bother. I never tweet, and my Instagram is like I don't, I don't, I don't, I don't take followers. I don't know, so I shouldn't tell people to
Yeah.
try and follow me on Instagram. But yeah, if you'll see me, join the groups. Radical unschooling info live.
Awesome. Well, thank you
I'm an
again.
unschooling Q&A. So
Unschooling Candy. Okay. Yes, you'll get me the links and I will make sure they're in the show notes. Thanks so much, Virginia, and have a great day.
Thank you.